So you're looking to start playing Teamfight Tactics. Well, you're in the right place. So many guides miss the mark for a true beginner. Today we're going to take you all the way from someone who hasn't even heard of Teamfight Tactics to someone who can win the majority of their early games. Tip number 1, what the hell is an auto battler? First things first, you'll need to understand what an auto battler is. If you already know this, great. Go ahead and skip to part 2, timestamps are in the description below. For the rest of you, let me quickly explain the pieces of the puzzle so you can get started. Auto battlers, or auto chess games as they're sometimes called, are one part gacha and one part movie. If that analogy means nothing to you, then let me dive a little deeper. Auto battlers are split into 2 repeating phases. In the first phase, you are given a choice of units, in this case champions, to purchase for gold. Once you have bought your character, you place it on your chess-like board, hence the name auto chess, and then the second phase begins. In the second phase, a random opponent player is chosen for you. Their champions line up on the other side of the chessboard, and then you watch them battle. You cannot influence this fight. It is like you set up a game of League of Legends where all the players are bots. And I don't mean your ranked teammates, I mean actual bots. These AI bots follow similar patterns all the time, so you can try to place your units down in clever ways to guarantee they'll do what you want. But realistically, this phase is just a movie. You watch your team get destroyed and hopefully learn about your team's weaknesses so you can account for them in the next buy phase. These 2 phases then repeat over and over with the occasional special round where you might vice a boss monster or choose from a spinning carousel of champions, but if you can understand these 2 main phases, congratulations, you know what an auto battler is. Tip number 2 is to focus on specific things early on. This game and its strategies are so vast, and there is a massive overload of information at the beginning. So my first main tip is to focus on a small number of things early on. Easier said than done, I know, so let me suggest what you can do. I'm actually relatively new to TFT myself, but having come from other auto battlers, I fortunately know the key to success when learning one: synergies. And using this information, I was able to place first in half of my lobbies in the first few days of playing. Before I jump into the specifics of this tip, let me stress that this and the other tips I go through are by no means exhaustive. They have been collated to give you a fighting chance of playing the game well early on. The rest you'll pick up as you play, but unlike other guides, this one is designed to let you at least win some of those early matches, so you don't have to play 100 games before you can actually start having fun. So what should you focus on early? There are these icons on every champion called its origin and class. Champions have between 1 and 3 of these currently, and in the wider auto battle world, we would call them archetypes, so that's what I'm going to call them for the rest of this video. When you have a set of matching archetypes, your team gets a huge buff in some way, depending on which archetype you went for. Rather than trying to learn and buy every champion in your first few games, look at the abilities of the first archetypes you get from your first champion, and try to activate the bonus of 1 or more of them if you like the sound of them. Try to make it an archetype that gives you a bonus to damage in some sort of way, as those tend to be the most consistent. Tip number 3, your second focus: stars. Not all TFT champions are equal. Higher cost champions that you find later in the game are stronger, and higher starred units are stronger. The former, the higher cost champions, will happen naturally if you focus on tip number 2. As you look for, let's say, more sure shot champions, you will naturally end up having to buy the more expensive units. But the latter point, higher starred champions, isn't so obvious. In auto battlers, you can typically upgrade your units, making them stronger by collecting multiple of the same unit, which is why I made the gacha reference earlier on. It is somewhat similar. If you have a unit that you like on your team, if you see a duplicate of it in the shop, buy that duplicate. If you collect 3 of the same unit or champion, they upgrade into a 2-star version, drastically improving them. It is worth getting pretty much any unit that you intend to use on your chessboard up to 2 stars. But if you collect 9 of the same unit, they evolve into a 3-star version and become insanely strong compared to what they used to be. It is incredibly hard to win a lobby without 3 stars early on, so it's almost worth focusing on 1 or 2 of your units and trying to get them to 3 stars. How do you decide on what unit to upgrade to 3 stars is more of an advanced tip, But if you do spot the fight overview bar at the end of a round, it looks like this, take a look at who on your team did the most damage and try to 3-star them as a sort of baseline guide. Tip number 4 is understanding red versus blue damage. If you come from League of Legends, this will be a lot more obvious to you, but as someone who came from other auto battlers, this was a game changer when I finally understood it. In that fight overview we saw at the end of the last tip, you undoubtedly saw that the bar was split between blue and red, or that some champions only had blue or red bars. These are the two types of damage in League of Legends, and by extension, TFT. There is a third type, ignore that, it literally doesn't matter for now. Red damage is known as AD, or attack damage, and is typically for more physical characters. So think archers, sword wielders, and other stabby types deal red damage, or AD. Abilities or items that improve attack damage, attack speed, or crit chance all help characters dealing red damage. Blue damage is known as AP, or ability power, and is typically for your more magical types. Staff users, weird creatures, healers, and pretty much anything else. Even some stabby people deal blue damage. It's almost always worth checking your battle recap to see if that soldier who looks like they should be dealing red damage is actually doing what you think. More often than not, they're actually dealing blue damage or a combination of both, and it's just better for you to know. Abilities or items that improve magical power, remove enemy magical resistance, and typically abilities or items that grant mana are all great for characters dealing blue damage. Alright, tip number 5 is going to briefly touch on items as we just mentioned that. TFT has a bunch of items that you can attach to your champions. Once you attach them, you can't get them back unless you sell that unit, and each pair of basic items you attach to a character will merge into a more powerful combo of the two. Do not worry too much about items early on. They are very good, they are very useful. You probably should focus on learning them, but early on, follow this simple tip and you will do fine with items. Hover over your item, and if it gives you health, armor, or magic resistance, throw it on the tankiest character you have. If it gives attack damage, attack speed, or crit chance, throw it on the champion that dealt the most red damage, or AD for you last round. And if it gives ability power or mana, throw it on the champion that dealt the most blue damage, or AP last round. That is it. That is all you need to know to begin with. But items are something you should try and learn as you play, and in future guides we'll go into this in a lot more detail. So I guess this is the YouTuber segue time to let you know that you should subscribe. I cover lots of strategy, card games, auto battlery games, so if this is a genre you enjoy, you are likely to find a new game you enjoy through me. So I think it's well worth subscribing, even if it's just so you know when I make more TFT guides. Tip number 6, the dreaded carousel. This thing, for a new player, and especially for a non-league new player, is horrifying. Champions that you barely recognize using skins that differ from the ones you might know from League if you do play it, are running around in a circle and are almost impossible to spot which is which. And on top of that, they all have this small box that has a picture of an item in it rushing around with them. And unlike in the rest of the game, here's a bonus tip for you, you can't right-click on them for more information about their archetypes and abilities. So, what do you do in this anxiety-inducing stage? Well, for beginners, either take a champion that you already have and you're looking to get a higher star of, or, because each of these champions come with a free item, pick one of these items if you want to beef your tank up, pick one of these items if you want to deal more red damage or AD, and pick one of these items if you want to deal more blue damage or AP. Then when you get back to your team, sell the champion it came on and put your new item on the champion you wanted to give some help to. Finally, a bonus tip for number 7, how to learn more champions and items. This is something that will come naturally. After a full game of using Jinx, for example, you will understand that she has a mix of red and blue damage, and you'll likely know that she's a ranged attacker, and if you develop both of her archetypes, you might understand what Anima Squad and Prankster both do in the current meta. But to speed the process along, we're planning to release shorter videos covering a bunch of champions, items, and maybe even builds, alongside the other beginner guides in the future. So this tip is also just another shameless plug for the channel. Go check out our channel page to see what guides we have for you. And that concludes our beginner's guide to Teamfight Tactics. I hope that helps you dive in and enjoy the game. If you found the guide helpful, please do drop us a like or comment and help make my day. I've been Gamesplay Greg, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.